Hello, I'm Alex from Year 2 Language. I'm one of the expert TOEFL teachers here, and in this video we're going to work on TOEFL Integrated Writing, focusing on the listening section, and I'm going to show you a strategy for taking notes. TOEFL Integrated Writing, note-taking for listening. In this lesson, we'll recap the integrated writing task, and I'll tell you what it is. We'll review the reading notes we made in the video before. If you haven't watched that already, make sure you go back. That's important viewing. We'll listen to a lecture and complete a note-making template. So integrated writing task description. Let's just refresh our memory of what it is. Remember that there are 3 steps in TOEFL integrated writing. Step 1 is to read a passage and take notes. You have 3 minutes to do this. Step 2, you listen to a lecture on the same topic as the reading and also take notes, around 2 minutes for this. And then the task itself, you have to write an integrated summary, and this should take 20 minutes. In this video, we're focusing on step 2, which is to listen to a lecture on the same topic as the reading and take notes. So let's do it. Here are the notes that we made based on the reading passage from the other video. So remember that the main topic of the passage, the overall topic, was climate change, and there were 3 main ideas, 1 in each paragraph. These were the notes that we made. The first one was rising sea levels, and the details we caught were this. There was always a rise in sea levels between ice ages. Recent rises have been lower than the historic average, and the sea level rise is lower than predicted. If you remember, that reading text was a kind of skeptical view of the impact of climate change. So point 2, main idea 2, was related to wildlife extinction. And the passage said, the details were that there has been no instance of extinction due to climate change. And the writer gave the example of polar bears. The writer said people expected them to go extinct, but actually numbers have risen. The third point was about ocean acidity, in particular coral bleaching. The writer said rumours were exaggerated and that coral reefs have survived other dramatic changes. So in the real test, once you've done the reading and you've got your notes, next comes the listening. So you will expect that the listening will be on the same topic. In this case, it's going to be about climate change. And you can also expect that those 3 points, those 3 main ideas, are going to be picked up in the listening again. And you're going to hear either the speaker will support and agree with those 3 points made in the reading passage, or the speaker may cast doubt on them and say why they're not true. Those are usually the 2 things that happen. To prepare for your listening, you should draw up on your page a couple of columns just like this, like we did for reading. So on the left, you've got a column for the main ideas. As I said, you expect it's going to be the same main ideas, but we're not sure yet. And on the right, a place to write your details. Remember that you'll only hear the listening once, so taking notes here is absolutely essential unless you have an unbelievable memory. So once the listening is done, you'll be left with your 2 sets of notes, and you'll work from those to write your summary. So how do you know what's a main idea and what's a detail? So you're listening here for big ideas, repeated ideas, mini topics. Think of it in the same way as we looked at the reading, where we saw words repeated a lot. We also heard that introductory statement, which gave us the main idea of each paragraph. The listening works in a similar way. And when it comes to details, you're listening for specific information like examples and facts and statistics. Note-taking is definitely a skill that you need to practice. You'll be able to develop your own style using abbreviations and symbols and pictures perhaps. Let's try it out together now. I'm going to play the lecture, and your job is to write down those 3 main ideas and the details. So grab a pen and paper, let's do it.
Despite all of the evidence pointing towards the dangers of climate change, there are many climate change deniers. Today, I'm going to give you some evidence that proves climate change is real. Firstly, sea levels are rising several times faster than in the past 2,800 years, and are accelerating because of the man-made global warming. Until the 1880s, the fastest rise in sea levels was about 3 centimeters to 4 centimeters a century, plus or minus a bit. But in the 20th century, the world's seas rose 14 centimeters. The International Academy of Sciences said that by 2100, the world's oceans would rise between 28 and 131 centimeters. If seas continue to rise as projected, it will cause a lot of problems and expense. Secondly, studies have found that climate change is already responsible for species extinction. In recent observations, the actual observed extinction risks were always worse than the predictions. Predictions of the average probability of extinction ranged from 7 to 10%. Meanwhile, the actual analysis of observations suggested that the extinction risk is actually worse, ranging from 14 to 15%. The proportion of species that will be threatened by 2100 is a whopping 32% based on actual observations. The number of species going extinct in response to the changing climate outstrip the predictions now, and they'll continue to do so well into the future. Now, finally, I'll talk about ocean acidity. For tens of millions of years, Earth's oceans have maintained a relatively stable acidity level. But research shows that this ancient balance is being undone by a recent and rapid drop in surface pH that could have devastating global consequences. Since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution in the early 1800s, fossil fuel-powered machines have driven an unprecedented burst of human industry and advancement. Scientists now know that about half of this is man-made CO2 that has been absorbed over time by the oceans. New research is finding that the introduction of massive amounts of CO2 into the seas is altering water chemistry and affecting the life cycles of many marine organisms, particularly those at the lower end of the food chain. It has been proven to inhibit shell growth in marine animals and is suspected to cause reproductive disorders in some fish. So is climate change a myth? The facts show otherwise.
So how did you go? Did you catch those main points? Did you catch some of those details? I'll show you my notes now. Now, they're probably going to look completely different to your notes, but let's see if we caught basically the same information. So just like in the reading, there were 3 main ideas, and in fact, the same ideas in the same order: rising sea levels, wildlife extinction, ocean acidity, but the details were quite different. So regarding rising sea levels, she said they've been rising more in the 20th century compared with the 1800s, and they're continued projections that they're going to rise rather, which will lead to problems and expense. In terms of wildlife extinction, actual extinctions are more than predicted. So again, this is quite a contrast to what we read. The third point is ocean acidity. So the speaker said there has been a change in the ocean's pH balance, which has altered water chemistry, and that this has a serious effect on sea life. So because we made such good notes when doing the reading, this was quite easy to do. Hopefully you found that. You can find the connection between those 3 points, and that's what it's all about in this task. Next, we're going to practice putting it all together in our summary. So that's how we write notes for the listening part of integrated writing. For more practice, make sure you log on to e2language.com, click on the writing section, integrated writing task, and do the practice activities there.